Claudio Ranieri made an observation today getting fired that's football. Now, what's football is you weren't very good at your job and you got fired and got paid for it. And that's what's wrong with football, rewarding mediocrity. Welcome to this week's edition of One-2-One with Simon Jordan. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe, and more importantly, to leave your questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with this week's show. Clearly, stepping aside gives him a double dip. It gives him probably more money than he'll earn out of the Usyk fight without actually having to have the fight. And then this enormous payday under this auspice of him fighting the victor of Usyk and Fury, which in my judgment would be Fury. So from a commercial standpoint, I would probably say pick the step aside. But from a boxing purist point of view, I want to see him do what other great heavyweights have done, which is go back and avenge their defeats and go back in real time and do it, not at a picked, posed, orchestrated time when maybe the fighter that you're fighting isn't in the same condition that he was when he beat you. You go back and do what Muhammad Ali did to Leon Spinks. You go back and do what Lennox Lewis did to Hazim Rahman. I realise Usyk's at a different level, but notwithstanding that, the diminishing nature of the defeat that Anthony suffered at Usyk's hands makes this a commercial decision or a boxing one, and some would say they both fall into the same category. Polly, Calvert-Lewin is a very good player, but it's very difficult to equate what he's done in a short period of time to being a top draw striker that might be appealing to the so-called elite clubs, which I'm assuming is what you're talking about by paying with the big boys. He's a good player, and he's played well in a slightly average Everton side, and they've missed him this season. They've missed a lot of things this season, like backbone, character, discipline, respect. But specifically with Calvert-Lewin, I don't know. There's not enough. He hasn't got a big enough body of work to suggest that he could cut it at United, or could cut it at Liverpool, or could cut it at Chelsea. And whilst he had a very good season last year, I'm not sure is the answer. If they punch their weight, they spent a lot of money, but so have a lot of other people. So if you look at it from an economic point of view, who should they be in front of? Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City? When you make that kind of argument, you say, really and truly, fifth might be an achievement for Arsenal. If you look back on the body of work that Arsenal have done between certain times, the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, you'd say no. But the here and now, I probably think if you finish fifth in the league at Arsenal, whilst it won't get you in the Champions League and it'll be disappointing from a revenue point of view, it's not bad. So whether it keeps him under the current contract or gets him an extension, I think it keeps him under the current contract. Are Watford the epitome of everything wrong in football? What's wrong with football is people getting paid far too much money and not being good enough to be warranting that money. Claudio Ranieri made an observation today getting fired that's football. Now, what's football is you weren't very good at your job and you got fired and got paid for it. And that's what's wrong with football, rewarding mediocrity. The idea that Watford have a model which people don't like, well, in no other industry do people get to be not very good at their job, yet be told that stability is the key component of ensuring that they are good at their job. Stability comes on progress. It's very difficult to argue that Ranieri was, in this instance, anybody worth keeping. So the decision in the first place was the wrong one. Watford have done, with their spend pattern, with their ownership model, have no God-given right to be in the Premier League, yet they've been there more often than not in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So whilst it doesn't look very edifying, because we're living in the idea that stability means a consistent manager and a manager in place that you can recognise, but it doesn't work that way with players. It doesn't work that way with football clubs anymore. And the idea that managers should be in jobs for a long term because it builds some edifying content is wrong. If you're not going the right direction after 6 months in most businesses, and if the situation is seismically worse, then people lose their jobs, and football carries on with this BS methodology that actually we need to keep on, and we keep on supporting someone or keep on giving them stability. And that's a methodology or a mythology that football itself has perpetuated. Whilst I don't think they should have fired some of the managers they fired, and one of the ones was Nigel Pearson with 2 or 3 games to go at the end of the season, I think that's unfathomable. You have to say that for Watford and what they spend, the Potters haven't done bad. And of course, now they've made a choice that Roy Hodgson comes in, which is a sensible one, and he may just get them out of it. This is the world that we live in. This is the football world that we live in, and managers have to understand that to be in the position that they're in, with the amount of remuneration they're given and with the opportunities in the Premier League that exist, they have to hit the ground running. And you only get stability when you show progress very quickly. And then that stability becomes something that you look for, which is continuity, and continuity then builds progress. So you shouldn't be so despairing of Watford, because there's people at Nottingham Forest and Sheffield Wednesday and clubs that have been, have won European Cups and have been mainstays in the Premier League once upon a time that can't get anywhere near it. Managers will always want more players, but Moisey will want the right players. And the January transfer window is an awful window to do business in. It's normally the time when you do business to salvage something dreadful happening, aka Newcastle buying players to get themselves out of the cart. West Ham will be buying players now to cement themselves in the top 4 in what I think is probably an unrealistic endeavour, because I think clubs that have spent far more money are going to correct themselves and supersede West Ham. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't be pushing the envelope. So I don't think they've let them down, because I'm not sure that they're being asked robustly questions by the manager of a must-have mentality. We must have more players to support our pursuit of an elite position. So whilst I will never actually join the gang of supporting Sullivan and Gold, I think it's probably just a little bit unfair to suggest that they've let anybody down at this time. Am I surprised how well Patrick Vieira's done at Palace? Yes and no, because his track record at New York City and I think Nice was okay, but it was kind of much of a muchness. And Palace were in a little bit of perceived disarray, with a load of players out of contract, a style of football that had been fermented over a period of time, which was not the easiest on the eye. It was all counter-attacking and a little bit safe, which incidentally will serve Watford very well with Roy Hodgson, by the way, when he goes there. But in the instance of Palace, they were looking for a new broom, and I felt it was a risk. I felt it was a pick 'em. It was 50-50. It could have gone either way. It would go really well or spectacularly wrong. And I think it's probably gone really well, because if you look at some of the games that Palace should have gotten results, well, I know shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? But there were games that they could have won against Arsenal and games against Brighton that they let points go in the very last minute that would have put them right on the periphery of the top 10, top 8. So they're looking at the style of Palace, look at the way they played against Liverpool the other day for periods of the game, look at the entertainment value. I think Vieira, as we say today, as we look at him today, his progress card is he's doing well. He's a B+, bordering upon an A-. So that's this week's edition of One-to-One with Simon Jordan. Now don't forget to let me know your views on AJ, Watford and Calvert-Lewin. And of course, to continue liking and subscribing in our pursuit of 1 million subscribers, and to leave your questions in the comment section below. Look forward to seeing you next week.